Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can always find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games in baseball for Tuesday. First up, we have an afternoon game between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the San Diego Padres. Zach Gallen and Yu Darvish are your projected starters for this one. Now, Zach Gallen is going to be making his second start of the season in this game. His first start, he did not fare too well against the Los Angeles Dodgers, going 4 2/3 innings, giving up 5 earned runs. But I will say, no home runs allowed, 7 strikeouts in that game. One of the big concerns I had with Gallen going into the season was the fact that his strikeout numbers were not great in spring training. He only had 10 Ks in 16 1/3 innings pitched. To me, Zach Gallen is going to have to miss some bats to have success throughout his MLB career. He's been around 10 strikeouts per 9, so that was a little bit of a concern. But to see him have 7 strikeouts against a tough Dodgers lineup, I do think he was a tad on the unlucky side in that game, giving up some 2-strike base hits that were little bloop singles into the outfield. I do think Gallen fares well in this start against the Padres, a lineup that's been inconsistent to start the year. And I also, Yu Darvish, who did not pitch in spring training, he had some injury concerns going into the season, to the regular season. He pitched in the World Baseball Classic, did not fare too well, had a 6 ERA in the WBC. And I think Arizona can get to him for a few runs. And the plus money price we're getting here with Zach Gallen, who I think is the better starting pitcher in this matchup, good enough for me. So give me the Arizona Diamondbacks here on the money line. Next up is the Chicago Cubs taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Hayden Wesneski and Luis Cessa on the mound for this one. There are some big expectations for Hayden Wesneski going into the season, and for good reason. He pitched really well in the limited work we saw him at the major league level last year, where he had 33 innings with a 2.18 ERA, 33 strikeouts, so a .8 home runs per 9, 1.9 walks per 9. He pitched really well at the major league level, and in spring training, he pitched well also. 17 innings, 22 strikeouts, a 2.12 ERA, a .5 home runs per 9, so he only gave up 1 homer, and 3.2 walks per 9, a little bit high, but still, I think Wesneski, he's proven to keep the ball on the ground and keep it in the yard. That's important when you're pitching a Great American Ballpark. We know a very hitter-friendly ballpark with a lot of home runs. Luis Cessa, on the other hand, is more of an opener. Probably won't go too deep into this game, but he's an opener that doesn't really miss a lot of bats. His strikeout numbers in his career, only 7.2 Ks per 9. Last season, 6.6 Ks per 9, so even worse strikeout numbers. And he's a guy that gives up a good amount of home runs, 1.6 homers per 9 last season. In spring training, he only pitched 6 innings. He gave up a home run. He only had 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, and a 4.5 ERA. I don't really trust him in this outing. I think the Cubs have the better lineup, the better starter, and the better bullpen. So give me the Chicago Cubs here at a nice price on the road. Next up, it's the Miami Marlins taking on the Minnesota Twins. Kenta Maeda on the mound for the Twins, and Sandy Alcantara, the defending Cy Young winner, on the mound for the Fish. Now, Sandy Alcantara struggled a little bit in his opening day start against the Mets. He went 5 2/3 innings with 3 earned runs allowed. He had 4 walks, which is the most concerning part of his stat line, in my opinion. 2 strikeouts against the Mets team at limit strikeouts to begin with. Not really surprising there. I think Sandy Alcantara overall looked fine. His velocity was there. I think he bounces back here and has a really strong outing against a Twins lineup that's been inconsistent to start the year. On the other side, Kenta Maeda making his season debut after being injured in 2022. In 2021, he had a 4.66 ERA, but going into this season, I think Maeda has a good campaign. He's facing a Marlins lineup that strikes out quite a bit. We know that Kenta Maeda is a strikeout pitcher, so I do think Maeda will be able to get through 4 or 5 quality innings in this one. Twins bullpen hasn't been too shabby to start the year. I think they deliver an under in this one. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. Sandy Alcantara, we know, can pitch 6, 7, 8 innings at really any time, especially after his first start out of the way. We should expect him to go 100 pitches plus as long as he pitches well. And I think we're going to see a low-scoring game, so give me the under in Twins-Marlins. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Washington Nationals with Josh Fleming and Chad Cole on the mound for this one. Now, overall, I think this is a very strong Rays pitching staff. We're used to seeing that from this organization. They're more of a small market team that doesn't have the biggest bats in the lineup each year, so they have to rely on those strong starting pitchers and relief pitchers as well. But Josh Fleming, to me, is one of the weaker links in that pitching staff. And, although he's an opener that shouldn't go too deep into this game, but he can go about 2-3 innings in his opens. We saw it last year, and we saw it in spring training. I do think Fleming, last year, a 6.43 ERA and 35 innings of work, so not the largest sample size, but even the year before, where he pitched over 100 innings with the Rays, he had a 5.09 ERA. So sure, his FIP is a little bit lower than those totals, but he's not a strikeout guy, and he can put guys on base. He gave up the long ball a little bit of an alarming rate last season, and in spring training, he gave up 2 home runs in 14 2/3 innings with only 12 strikeouts, a 4.91 ERA. This is not a very strong Nationals lineup, but I do think this is a matchup that benefits them. On the other end, I think the Rays are certainly going to be able to score some runs on Chad Cole, a starter who's had a FIP above 5 in the last 3 seasons. We saw in spring training a 5.09 ERA in 17 2/3 innings of work, 15 strikeouts and 7 walks, not the numbers you want to see for Chad Cole with his new team. I think this Rays lineup is kind of underrated going into the season because we saw last year pretty notably the offense struggled in that wild card series. They only scored 1 run in that 2-game series against the Guardians. So, but I still think with a healthy Wander Franco and healthier bats all around basically in the lineup, the Rays are going to be a tough offense to face in the American League. I think they score some runs in this one and get us over the total. So give me the over in Rays Nationals. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Boston Red Sox with Nick Pivetta and Roansy Contreras on the mound for this contest. This is a tough one for me, but I am leaning towards the underdog here, getting the 1.5 runs on the run line, because Nick Pivetta really struggled last year. He didn't look too sharp in spring training, a 6.11 ERA in 17 2/3 innings. He's a guy that's going to be able to miss some bats and earn some strikeouts. We've seen the Pirates struggle with strikeouts at times, but overall, I think this Pirates lineup is in better shape this year than it was at this point last year. They brought back Brian Reynolds. He's off to a solid start to the year. O'Neill Cruz developing as one of the better players, young players in the National League. Bringing in some bats in Carlos Santana, G-Man Choi. These are role player guys, but I do think they're going to make a difference in the lineup, and I do think the Pirates will be able to get to Nick Pivetta for a few runs early in this one. Roansy Contreras on the other side has been inconsistent in his first few seasons at the major leagues. We've seen some really good things from him. We also see him struggle at times with the home run ball, especially in spring training. He went 9 1/3 innings with 10 strikeouts. No home runs allowed, which is good to see, in a 3.86 ERA. It's never easy for a young pitcher going into Fenway Park and facing the Red Sox. We know it's a very hitter-friendly ballpark. It can be very tough, similar to Coors Field or Great American for a young pitcher, but I do think Contreras is good enough to get us a cover here with the Pirates on the run line. So give me the 1.5 runs here with the underdogs. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the New York Yankees with Matt Strahm as the opener and Domingo Germán making his season debut on the mound for the Yankees. Now, Domingo Germán is a tough starting pitcher to back in this spot, in my opinion. He did have a higher ERA at home last year than he did on the road, and we saw in spring training he struggled quite a bit with an ERA above 8. And he's also, starting pitcher that at the beginning of his career, he was a strikeout guy, earning double-digit Ks per 9 in his first 2 seasons with the Yankees. Then in 2019, following it up with 9.6 strikeouts per 9 in a strong season. But he suffered a lot of injuries, and I do think because of those injuries, his strikeout stuff has suffered, and we saw last year only 7.2 strikeouts per 9 in 72 1/3 innings pitched for Germán. He also has some issues with the long ball. We've seen in the last 4 seasons for him over 1.4 home runs per 9, and I do think at Yankee Stadium, more of a hitter-friendly ballpark where the home runs are pretty easy to come by with the short porches in left and right, I do think Germán is going to struggle in spots like these against a solid Phillies lineup. We know the Phillies have struggled to start the year, but a lot of it's been because of their pitching staff. So I do think the Phillies can score some runs early on Domingo Germán. I also think the Yankees can get to Strahm and this Phillies bullpen if that's what they're going with, a bullpen type game here. We know the Phillies bullpen has not been too sharp, really, that the entire pitching staff has struggled to start the season. So I think the Yankees bats, one of the best lineups in baseball, can get to them for a few early and often. So give me the over in the Phillies Yankees. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the New York Mets. We're going to see Max Scherzer making his second start of the season and Wade Miley pitching with his new club in the Milwaukee Brewers. And, Wade Miley, not really a starting pitcher I'm looking to back very often in 2023. He is a, pitch-to-contact guy. Doesn't really earn a ton of strikeouts. We saw last year only 37 innings from Wade Miley, but he only had 28 strikeouts in those innings. So sure, a 3.16 ERA looks pretty good on paper, but I don't think he'll be able to replicate that number in 2023. And I don't really like this spot for him against the New York Mets lineup that already does a great job limiting strikeouts against lefties. And to start the season, this is a Mets team that's faced a ton of left-handed pitching. We saw in that Marlins series, they faced Jesus Luzardo and Trevor Rogers. So usually when you play a 3-game series or 4-game series, you'll only face about 1, maybe 2 lefties, but the New York Mets had 75 plate appearances against lefties in that first series with Miami, and they played pretty well against those left-handed pitchers. We saw them get to Trevor Rogers early in that game, in the final game of that series. I think they can score some runs for Max Scherzer early in this one. We know Scherzer, one of the best pitchers in baseball. Sure, he struggled at the end of his outing against the Marlins, gave up that home run to Garrett Cooper, but he had 6 strikeouts in 6 innings. I think he pitches well in this one, so give me the New York Mets on the money line. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Kansas City Royals. We're going to see a pair of lefties on the mound for this one, Yusei Kikuchi and Kris Bubic. Now, both of these starters certainly struggled in 2022. Kris Bubic had a 5.58 ERA in 129 innings in the regular season last year, only 7.7 Ks per nine, a 4.4 walks per nine. It was not a very good season. Yusei Kikuchi, similar stuff where he had a 5.19 ERA. His strikeout numbers were a lot better, but he walked a ton of guys, gave up a lot of home runs. But I will say both of these starting pitchers had great spring training, some promising stuff to see from both of these lefties, as Yusei Kikuchi pitched 20 2/3 innings in spring, so a ton of work he had. 31 strikeouts, no home runs allowed. That's really the most promising stat to see, no homers. And 10 walks, his control was still a little bit off. He walked some guys, but still a .87 ERA for Kikuchi in spring. That's what you want to see if you're the Blue Jays, hoping to get a pretty solid season from their 4th, 5th man in the rotation. Kris Bubic on the other end, he pitched well in spring, 10 1/3 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts, no home runs. He had 7 walks, so the control's still an issue for Bubic. He had 6.1 walks per nine in the spring training, 4.4 last year in the regular season. I do think that this game comes down to I trust Kikuchi a little bit more than Bubic, and I trust the Blue Jays lineup a lot more than the Royals, so I'm going to take the Toronto Blue Jays and lay the run line. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals hosting the Atlanta Braves. We're going to see Steven Matz and Dylan Dodd on the mound for this one. Now, I think Steven Matz was one of the more unlucky pitchers in baseball last year. Not only did he have some injuries and only had 48 innings of work, but when you look at his ERA at 5.25, you think he really struggled, but his FIP was at 3.78 and his xFIP was at 3.15. He struck out 10.13 guys per 9 innings. He had 1.88 walks per 9, so he didn't give up a lot of free passes. He missed a lot of bats, and his home runs per 9, a little bit high at 1.5, that's for sure, but he had a high BABIP and a low xFIP. I think he's going to have a nice bounce-back season for the Cardinals this year, and he looked pretty strong in spring training, where he had a 1.53 ERA in 17 2/3 innings, 17 strikeouts, only 2 home runs allowed, and 3 walks allowed. So I like this spot here for Steven Matz. He's facing a youngster in Dylan Dodd, making his major league debut. I do think that Dodd's going to struggle in his first few starts at the big league level. He pitched well in spring training, that's for sure. 18 innings, 20 strikeouts, but that's spring training. This is a really tough lineup to face, and a Cardinals lineup that limits strikeouts at a great rate. One of the lowest strikeout rates in baseball last year. They're a very strong lineup from top to bottom. This is a really tough spot to be in for your first start in the big leagues. I think the Cardinals get to him for a few runs. I think Matz pitches well. I think the Cardinals win this one, so give me the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see Tyler Wells and Andrew Heaney on the mound for this Orioles and Rangers game. Now, both starting pitchers had some concerning results in spring training this year, but I do think that Andrew Heaney is the starting pitcher that, for me, has a better chance of earning a really shutdown, strong outing than Tyler Wells does. I think Tyler Wells, at best, is still going to give up 3, maybe more runs in a game like this against a Rangers lineup that's just been red hot to start the season. Andrew Heaney, while he has certainly had his opportunities to blow up in games, we've seen him give up home runs and walks galore. He's also a guy that misses a ton of bats, and sometimes, especially at the start of the season with the Dodgers last year, he could just have shut-down starts where he strikes out a million guys, doesn't give up a single run, not really many base runners either. Now, in spring training, like I said, both guys a little bit concerning. Tyler Wells, a 5.74 ERA. Andrew Heaney, a 6.75 ERA. But the strikeout numbers were still really good for Heaney, and I think that his bats will back him up. At the very least, if this is a back-and-forth game early on, I still think the Rangers have a good enough chance to win this one late. But I'm going to take the Texas Rangers here and trust that Heaney gets us some missed bats early. But a game overall I'm going to be staying away from. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Detroit Tigers. Matt Manning and Framber Valdez on the mound for this one. To me, I just can't trust the Tigers' offense enough against Framber Valdez, one of the best pitchers in the American League. For me, it's Astros run line or pass. We see the Astros as a huge money line favorite, so there's really not a ton of value in a game like this. But Matt Manning is somebody that I'm not really looking to back too often at the beginning of the season, as he is somebody that had 3.43 ERA in the major leagues last year, but that was only 63 innings of work, and he only had 48 strikeouts in those innings. In spring training, he struggled. He had 14 innings of work, 15 strikeouts, which is good, but he had 6 walks, and he gave up 23 base hits, 11 total runs, and 10 earned runs, a 6.43 ERA. Like I said, Just not going to cut it against these Astros. At Minute Maid Park, it's just not a tough place to pitch. And when your offense is not really backing you up consistently, it's tough to take a chance here with the Tigers, even though they're getting a really good price. So give me the Houston Astros. I'm going to lay the run line. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics hosting the Cleveland Guardians. J.P. Sears on the bump for the A's, making his season debut, and Shane Bieber, one of the best pitchers in the AL, going for the Guardians. Shane Bieber was sharp in his first outing, although his strikeout numbers weren't the best. We saw him go 6 innings, a shutout ball against a very tough Mariners lineup. Even though his Guardians bats were not able to back him up in the end, the Guardians lost that game 3-0. I still think they'll be able to back him up in a game like this against J.P. Sears, who struggled in spring training. He gave up 4 home runs and 17 in the third innings pitched. He had 18 strikeouts, but this is a Guardians team that just does not strike out at a very high rate, so they're going to be able to put the ball in play. They've got a lot more power in the lineup this year, adding guys like Josh Bell and Mike Zunino, and I do think that they're going to be able to get to Sears for a few runs early on. Shane Bieber should give him 5-6 strong innings, and in the end, I like the Guardians to win this one on the run line, so give me Cleveland laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, it's the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Seattle Mariners. We're going to see Luis Castillo in his second outing of the season, and Jose Suarez making his first start of the year for the Angels. Now, Castillo pitched really well in his first start this year. He went 6 innings of one-hit baseball, no earned runs, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. That's really impressive because that was against the Cleveland Guardians, a team, like I just mentioned, doesn't strike out at a very high rate, so to earn 6 Ks through 6 innings, nice sharp stuff from Castillo to start the season. Jose Suarez on the other end for the Angels, somebody that didn't have a lot of work in spring training, only 8 2/3 innings. He only had 6 strikeouts at a 4.15 ERA. For me, it's tough to back him in a game like this against such a strong starting pitcher and a very strong bullpen and a strong home crowd advantage for the Mariners. So give me the Seattle Mariners on the money line against their rivals. And the final game for Tuesday's card in Major League Baseball, it's the Colorado Rockies and the Los Angeles Dodgers. German Marquez and Julio Urias on the mound for this contest. I mentioned the first game of the season that Julio Urias is somebody that I am looking to fade in the early starts of the year because I do think he is overvalued going into 2023. And although he got the win last time out for the Dodgers in their opening day game against the Diamondbacks, I'm still fading him in this spot against a Rockies team that's been competitive offensively to start the season. And the big thing is, even though the Rockies are on the road, they still have not played a series at Coors Field yet. So those altitude differences the Rockies have not experienced quite yet. And they're going to certainly struggle in their road games later on this season. And there'll be times to fade the Rockies when they're on the road. But this is not one of those, in my opinion. German Marquez was excellent in spring training. I thought he was pretty good in his first start of the year. He got the win against a tough Padres lineup, so couldn't have been that bad. He went 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, 5 base hits, no walks, no home runs, and only 2 earned runs allowed in that 7-2 Rockies win. I think Rockies keep this game close. If not, win the game outright. We're getting a great number here with the road team. So give me the Colorado Rockies plus the 1.5 runs, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well. And that's it. Those are the games in the MLB for Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.